Good morning, everyone. On behalf of MedWet, I'm really happy to welcome you all to this third webinar about inventories, mapping and monitoring wetlands, Mediterranean wetlands, technique, challenge, and lesson learned. My name is Flavio Monti, and I'm the manager of the Scientific and Technical Network of MedWet. And today with me, there is also our focal point of the Mediterranean Ramsar Site Managers Network, Mrs. Sana Mezugi, and our communication officer, which is Abders Marie. As some of you already know, this activity is part of the strategy 2 of the MAVA overarching project M3, improving and sharing the knowledge base to promote scaling up, under the MAVA project, which is called Disseminating Knowledge and Sharing Experience for Promoting Wetland Conservation around the Mediterranean. This project aims at ensuring that all the existing knowledge.
Flavio,
yes.
Flavio, sorry. I just have to inform the audience that we have translation. So it is in the upper part of your screen on the right. So you have the button English or French. Pour les participants qui parlent la langue française, ils peuvent appuyer sur la touche FR. Donc, et on a une traduction simultanée. Et pardonne-moi, Flavio, de te couper.
No worries.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I was saying that this project, it aims at ensuring that all the existing knowledge that we already have on Mediterranean wetlands and that all the parcels collected since many years of work is better targeted, filtered, and then also translated into understandable discourse and practical recommendation for all that manage, conserve, work, or may directly impact wetlands, as you all. This activity foresees the delivery of 5 different webinars held by members of the Mediterranean Scientific and Technical Network, which is a network of top scientists and experts on wetland-related issues from different Mediterranean countries, which work through 5 different specialist groups in the key areas of the 5 different webinars. And also the aim is to provide scientific and technical support to the MedWet member countries, but not only, also to the work of the Ramsar Convention from a Mediterranean perspective. Sorry, I would ask to people that the microphone open to switch off if during the speech. Thanks. And initially, this webinar series was targeted at wetland managers that have a key role to play on the ground to conserve wetlands. So to support them in their mission, MedWet has also established the network of Mediterranean Ramsar Site Managers, which brings together wetland conservation practitioners associated to Ramsar sites in order to promote a change in policy and action on the ground, with people dedicated to fostering the best management practices, knowledge and change, and public education about wetland services and values. At the same time, given the efficient work of NGOs in the conservation of wetlands, today we have a larger audience, including representatives of many and several NGOs in the Mediterranean that actively participate in the management and conservation of Mediterranean wetlands. So I'm really happy to welcome everyone. Before starting, we briefly recall the calendar of the 5 different webinars. 2 of them have already been done in the previous months. So I will ask to my colleague Sana just to quickly share the screen to show the program and next opportunities for attending the other 2 webinars. Yes, thank you, Sana. As you can see, the first 2 were about governance and management planning, biodiversity, and today is about inventories. The other 2 about ecosystem services and climate change will be held later on during spring in March and May. So please stay connected with us. And Sana, please could you also share the agenda for today? Because the webinar scheduled today is about inventories, mapping and monitoring Mediterranean wetlands, techniques, challenges, and lessons learned. As most of you already know, the information that we have on wetlands location and extent, but as well as on their ecological character and services, is sometimes scattered, underestimated, and in many cases also difficult to find and access. However, wetland inventories are vital components of the effective wetland management because they can provide essential information to support not only wetland management and conservation decisions at local and national scale, but even at international levels. Wetland inventories are essential tools for countries to meet their commitments in wetland protection and monitoring, even under global agreements. So we are pleased to have with us today two of the greatest experts in this sector that I'm going to briefly introduce. The first speaker of the day is Anis Gilmami, who is the project manager of the Mediterranean Wetlands Observatory, operating under the aegis of the Mediterranean Wetland Initiatives and operated by Tudvala. Anis today will speak about how to better integrate Earth observation data and tools in order to support national wetland inventories and reporting obligation, mainly Ramsar obligation, but even sustainable development goals. A few words about Anis. Anis is a project leader of the Research Institute for the Conservation of Mediterranean Wetlands, or Tudvala, with more than 10 years of experience in implementing Earth observation-based tools for the monitoring, the conservation, but also the restoration of wetland ecosystems. In the framework of the development of the wetland inventories across Mediterranean countries, Anis is also contributing through providing maps and special indicators related to the extent of their habitats and dynamics observed over time. So we are really interested about his speech today. And the second speaker of the day instead is Thanos Giannakakis, program manager of WWF Greece, who will speak about the tools and approach that have been used to secure the legal protection of the Greek highland wetlands and the replication of the Greek experience in all the other islands of the Mediterranean basin will be also presented today by Thanos. A few words about Thanos as well. Thanos has joined the WWF Greece team as a field researcher many years ago. And since 2011,
à partir de 2011, il est le coordinateur du programme pour la conservation des zones humides en Grèce.
Between 2017 and 2020, Thanos was the head of the program, coordinating 13 partners from 9 Mediterranean countries. And today is also responsible for the development of nature-based solution initiative or WWF Greece, which focus mainly on mitigating the impacts from floods. Some personal information about Thanos: he also devotes his free time to promote the sustainable development of another very fragile ecosystems, which is the mountains. He also loves skiing, running, and taking photographs. And most of all, on top of all, he spends a lot of time with his 2 sons, trying to make them happy and positive person. I particularly appreciate this last point because it means that in the next future, probably, it will help the next generation to have a better approach to conserve our natural heritage in the Mediterranean basin. So we can now start, I think, with the first speaker of the day, which is Anis, presenting wetland mapping and inventories. Anis, please, the floor is yours. And I don't know if Sana, before, have something other to add that I forgot. Otherwise, I think we can, start.
I just kindly invite everyone to write his name and his organization in this chat. So we have all the participants. And thank you.
And yes, thank you, Sana. Anis, are you ready? We can already see your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Flavio. Thank you and good morning everyone. Bonjour à tous. Alors juste deux mots, je vais.
Good morning, everybody. I will be speaking in English so that the recording can be done in English, and in any case.
Simultané, donc, et n'hésitez pas à la fin pour les non-anglophones parmi l'audience à poser des questions même en français et je serai ravi d'y répondre. Okay, now I will switch to English for the presentation. So thanks a lot, Flavio, for the kind introduction. And as it was said, my name is Anis Gelmame. I'm project leader at the Tour du Vala. It's a research institute. So the Tour du Vala is a research institute based in the Camargue in southern France, and we are working on conservation of the conservation of wetlands all around the Mediterranean basin since now almost 70 years till now. And today I will try to maybe show some examples of how to better introduce or how to better integrate, the Earth observation data or remote sensing data for wetlands mapping, and also how to use these maps and information to derive indicators and to feed, for example, national inventories. So, as you probably already know, most of you, the Mediterranean basin is a hotspot for biodiversity, and it's mainly thanks to wetlands because they are among the most productive ecosystem in the region. They're very high biodiversity richness, but paradoxically, these ecosystems are also those who are the most threatened by human activities in the region. And in this context, we still need to have a regional picture of their status and trends, and also to know what are the main pressures and the main threats on this ecosystem in order to improve their protection and conservation. So we need, for example, to gather more information at this pan-Mediterranean scale on what is the total extent of these ecosystems, the water quality and quantity that these ecosystems needs, what are the status and threats of their biodiversity, the impact of global changes, including climate change on their ecosystem services, their how to better take into consideration their conservation in the political agendas, etc. So all this information are still needed and required for better management and conservation of these ecosystems at the regional scale. So in this context, we have developed now since maybe more than 13 years from now, we have developed this Mediterranean Wetlands Observatory, which is based at the Tour du Vala Research Institute, which is a scientific and technical tool that the main goal is to monitor wetland ecosystems in all the Mediterranean basin, and with the objective to better disseminate the knowledge among the decision makers, but also the organization of civil society and all the wetland managers all over the Mediterranean countries. And these objectives sorry, could you please turn off your mic? Est-ce que vous pouvez juste fermer vos micros?
And this is okay. You can continue.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, how this Mediterranean Wetlands Observatory works. So we work through development indicators. So these regional indicators to answer the questions that we showed before, I showed before, but also many other questions related to wetlands conservation. And today we will talk only about this, the first question: what is the total extent of wetland ecosystems in the Mediterranean countries? And in this framework, what could the Earth observation tools provide? What could the Earth observation tools provide for that? So it could improve, for example, our knowledge about the status and trends of wetlands. However, we should also keep in mind that mapping wetland habitat and condition using Earth observation is very challenging. It's not an easy task to do. Why? Because it's very difficult to capture and to detect the the big heterogeneity of wetland ecosystems and also their dynamics over time. For example, here you see this this example on Sabkhat Sijoumi in Tunisia, where you have only in 1 year this variation and dynamic of the surface water. So how to better integrate this information, this dynamics, which is a part of the wetland characteristic of the ecological characteristics of Mediterranean wetlands, how to better integrate this in the definition and also in the extent, the total extent of wetland ecosystems. This is another example for another very dynamic wetland in Algeria, in Al Qala region, which is this wetland called La Mekada. And based on this, for example, on this wetland in Algeria, if you see, for example, here, this is the total or the maximum of the total, but the maximum extent of water or surface water in this wetland in 6 years between 19 what we can see here is the maximum surface water. However, if we map this total extent, and if we compare this total extent of surface water,
il faut considérer toutes les
habitat, the wetland habitat, you can see that there is a difference between the two definitions. So we cannot base the definition of wetland extent only on the surface water extent, which is commonly a common error or a common mistake that we see in some inventories, that we have this confusion, this common confusion between the total extent of surface water and the wetland habitat mapping. So we should keep in mind and be careful on not using only the total extent of water to delineate wetland ecosystems. Like, for example, we can see here the global data set provided by the Global Surface Water Explorer, which is a very good and reliable data set on surface water, but it could not be used or only the only basis to map wetland ecosystems at wide scale. So if you want to go or to know more about this common confusions and these challenges, I can advise you to read this article that we have published 3 years ago with many other colleagues on the challenges that we are facing on mapping wetlands using Earth observation. So now let's go to the techniques and the method. So there is a need to develop a reliable Earth observation based tool that could allow us to map wetland habitats at wide scale. And why we are insisting on habitats, because mapping wetland habitats is different than delineating wetland sites. So this is two different things that are complementary, of course, but are different. When we talk about Earth observation, we talk mainly on mapping habitats and not mapping sites. I will come back to this difference later on at the end of the presentation. And how we did this, or how we can do this, we can do it, for example, by using an approach that we have developed this last years in the framework of different projects, including the Horizon 2020 satellite-based wetland observation service project. And this methodology is based on 3 steps that we will see together here. So the first step. So, okay, before going to the different steps, so I will just talk about the 2 national case studies that we will use and as examples here in this presentation. So we have tested this approach on 2 different countries, Albania and Tunisia. So these countries have been used as a pilot countries in the Mediterranean basin to implement, to develop, and to validate, but also to implement this approach for wetland extent mapping based on Earth observation. So the first step is to map potential wetlands area. So how we can map this potential wetland area. So first of all, what is the potential wetlands area? So the potential wetland area is an area where we have a higher probability to find wetland habitats. So it's not the final map the wetland habitat extent, but it's a kind of delineation of the functional area of wetlands. And this functional area of this delineation of functional area of wetland is based on different characteristics of wetlands that we can derive from data, for example, hydromorphological characteristics, but also soil related to wetlands, and also climatic information that are usually used to better delineate wetland ecosystems. So, for example, we can first of all use the DM, the elevation model. So the elevation models could help us to derive different indices, like, for example, the topographic wetness index, but also the floodplain index, which is the extent of the flooded area along the rivers and the streams. So based on this DEM, we can derive these different indices. And also in the second step, we can derive here on the right, you can see the map of the surface water. So the surface water are also mapped using satellite images and satellite time series. Then we can also add ancillary data, other ancillary data, like, for example, the soil data. The soil data correspond to the information on soils that could hold water in their surface area. So all this information could be derived from geological maps. For instance, we can add another ancillary data, which is the built-up area, which is which could be used as a mask to mask all the areas or all the pixels that are already built up, that are already covered by urban areas or roads, etc. And another ancillary data that we can also use to model the potential area, the potential wetland area, is the evapotranspiration, the potential evapotranspiration maps that could be also derived from globally available and open source data like WordClim data, for instance. So all these indices and all these maps are then thresholded. So we use, for example, the existing information on wetlands, like previous inventories, or some specific maps on some sites, to threshold all these indices. And after thresholding, we can combine all these indices and we provide this kind of map. So here is the final map of the potential wetland area, which is built on different classes. For example, here we have identified six or seven classes, which are the classes showing the probability to find wetlands. So from low probability to high probability. And also we have added the surface water classes, as you can see here. So if you see, for example, in this statistic that are derived from for Albania, almost 15% to 18% of the country could be considered as potentially with the high probability, so the high probability to hold wetland habitats. So we can do this also for other countries, like, for example, here for Tunisia, it's the same, exactly the same approach with the same input data in the model, and we can have this potential wetland area for another countries, like here in Tunisia. And if you see in details, if we see in details, for example, here in Sabhat, in one specific wetland, which is Sabhat Sidi El Han in Tunisia, you can see that this potential wetland area could delineate all the functional area of the wetland. So it includes, of course, the wetland habitats that are existent, that still exist, but also all the area, like, for example, the flood prone area of the wetland as a functional unit or functional area of this wetland. And we can also detect some wetlands that were not detected in the first inventory, like, for example, here wet pastures, some temporary wetlands that are difficult to map or difficult to detect using classic approaches. So based on this approach, which is a hydromorphological approach, we can detect this wetlands. And the other advantage of having this information on the potential area is also the fact that we can detect ancient wetlands that have been already destroyed or have been already drained. Like, for example, here in Albania, we come back to Albania. We have this example of the Maliki swamps in southeast Albania, which have been drained in the 50s and the 60s, and most of the wetlands disappeared now and have been converted into intensive agriculture. So if you see on the right side, you can see that the potential wetland map could detect this wetland as an ancient wetland that have been drained. And this information is very useful when we look for areas to restore. For example, if we are looking for potential restorable areas for wetlands, we can see this potential area of ancient wetlands, potential area of wetlands to detect ancient wetlands that have been drained, and propose areas as restorable wetland areas. This is another example. This is another example of an ancient wetland still in Albania, which is the Toman swamp. It's on the coastal side. And another very interesting example of lost wetland that have been converted into intensive agriculture in Albania, which is the Vurgu marshes in the coastal area south of Albania. So as you can see, this potential wetland area map is used in this context to produce wetlands inventory or to support wetlands inventory at national scale, but it could be also used to support wetlands restoration activities. So now we have the baseline, which is this potential area map. So what we do, the next step is to map wetland habitats. So map the effective wetlands or the still existing wetland habitats within this potential wetland area. So the first, first of all, we need to delineate this functional area. So based on this probability classes that you have seen before in the previous map. So we can, for example, work on the high probability classes, or based on the high probability classes, to delineate this functional area of wetland, like you can see here in Albania. And as I said before, it represents more or less 18% of the country. In Tunisia, we did the same. So we have thresholded this potential wetlands area map to delineate this functional area of wetlands, and we compared, for example, this delineation of functional area of this mask of functional areas, wetlands area with existing inventory, and we have more than 98% of the wetlands, of the inventoried wetlands that have been inventoried before, that are already included within this area in this mask. So what we do next is to classify the images. We have the time series provided. For example, here in Tunisia, we have used the Sentinel-2 images of 2020, and we have classified them using a nomenclature called Korean land cover and the Ramsar nomenclature. So it's a hybrid nomenclature system combining two different systems, the Korean land cover, which is used mainly in Europe, but also the Ramsar definition of wetlands in order to better identify wetland habitats with this based on this definition, which is the Ramsar definition, which is also the main definition used by many countries for wetlands inventories. So based on that, we have classified all the images for 2020, and we have provided this, and then we have we obtained this map of wetland habitats. So if we compare, for example, in countries where we have already existing inventories, like in Tunisia, we had the inventory provided by the national authority in 1997. You can see, for example, just in comparing the two nomenclatures, in comparing the two systems, classification systems, that's using our approach, we have very wide definition of wetlands, so we can have a better definition of their habitats and their characteristics compared to what existed before. So we can see in the bottom that the nomenclature is very limited to 5 main classes. And if we compare the spatial distribution of the wetlands, so you can see that based on our approach, we have very broad, thanks to the broad definition of wetlands, we can detect other habitats that have been not inventoried or have been not detected in the previous inventories. Like, for example, here in this example of Sabkhat Kelpia, you can see all these areas here correspond to wet pastures and inland marshes that have been not they have been not detected or inventoried in the first inventory. And even if you see the lake, the extent of the lake here of the Sabkha itself, so based on our approach, the total extent of the Sabkha is now, it corresponds more to the reality than to what we had before with the existing inventories. And this is the final result for Tunisia. So we have implemented this approach for the whole country based on the Sentinel-2 2020 time series. And we have also integrated here, we have even integrated the marine area under 6 meter depths at low tides. Because if you see at the Ramsar definition of wetlands, this is also a habitat, a specific habitat that is also considered by Ramsar as a wetland. So we have included to this national inventory this specific class that you can see here in light yellow. And this is the result also for Albania. So it's almost the same classes. Of course, they are not distributed in the same way because we have 2 different biogeographical climates, but it's almost the same approach and the same classification that we can use for all the Mediterranean countries. And the third step is the reporting indicators. So based on the classification that we are using, which already include the Ramsar definition of wetlands, it's easier now for the user to calculate or to derive indicators related to reporting obligations. For example, here you can directly derive from the produced map on the wetland habitats, the indicators related to Ramsar obligation reporting. For example, here we have the 3 main Ramsar classes: coastal wetlands, inland wetlands, and man-made wetlands. We have derived this for the whole country in Albania, and the same. We can calculate indicators related to the Sustainable Development Goal 661 objective indicator, sorry, using the same approach. So based on the first habitat map, you can easily classify the habitats corresponding to these 3 classes for the SDG 661, which are the vegetated wetlands, open water bodies, and also river water bodies. And the same for Tunisia, we did it in the same way. So we have classified the different habitats according to the Ramsar definition for coastal, inland, and man-made wetlands. And the same way for the SDG 661 at the scale of the whole country. So now, what do we need for next steps? So to develop a harmonized pan-Mediterranean wetland database as a support to national inventories. So as I said before at the beginning, based on this approach, we can map wetland habitats, but it doesn't mean that we are detecting or that we are inventorying the wetlands at national scale. So this information should be used as a baseline to develop the national inventories, because what we have here is the information on the habitats, the information on some characteristics of this habitat, what kind of wetlands, etc., what is the surface water regime, but we are not integrating in the database, for instance, the name of the sites, the main pressures, the main ecosystem services, etc. So all this information should be also gathered, for example, from the field and integrated in the database. That's why I'm insisting to say that this is data that should be used as a baseline for wetlands inventory, but it's not the final wetlands inventory at the national scale. So the ultimate goal is to promote a regional framework. Of course, we are not doing this only for as a knowledge-based baseline, but also to promote a regional framework for wetlands protection and conservation through national legislation and also multilateral agreements. How? By providing harmonized pan-Mediterranean general picture of wetland regarding their location, delineation, main ecological characteristics, threats, and conservation status. And as I said, this is the difference between mapping the habitats that we are doing here and also complementing this information by adding other information on this habitats and also integrating them into wetland sites with the proper names and IDs. And this general picture should be developed using the broad definition of wetland ecosystems. This is why we are using here the Ramsar definition, which is the broadest known definition of wetlands many countries are using. It also should be generated through georeferenced layer and maps linked to regional data sets. This is very important because this information should be also used as a baseline to be crossed with other information in order to assess the main pressures, for example, on wetlands. It should be also downscaled and adapted to each country according to its national specifications. For example, if a country has their own its own definition of wetlands, so this regional picture, which is harmonized at the pan-Mediterranean scale, should be also adapted or compatible with these definitions that are used in specific countries. If these countries are using a different definition,
donc chaque pays, comme je l'ai dit, utilise une définition différente.
Could be used as baseline to help countries finalize or update their national inventories. Like, for example, the two previous examples that we have seen in Albania and Tunisia, they already had their inventories, but they were developed many years ago. For Albania, it was in 2003 and Tunisia in 1997. So this information could be used as a baseline to update the data sets, and also use their up-to-date inventories as a significant tool for the implementation of appropriate conservation and restoration measures. So how to better integrate this baseline, this knowledge baseline in the, for example, in the national strategies for wetlands conservation. So this is a very crucial point that should be discussed with the countries. So we can provide information, we can provide the knowledge baseline, but this knowledge baseline should be also taken and integrated into the national strategies like biodiversity strategy, but also wetland strategy, in order to promote and to develop conservation or restoration actions. And yeah, going back to this regional picture, so the good news is that this map of the potential wetlands area is now available at the Mediterranean scale. So for all the countries, we can have the same baseline to delineate this functional area of wetlands, as you can see here with this map and example in Algeria. And also based on this map, as we said before, we can delineate or detect potential areas for wetlands restoration. So this is another objective that we can have here using this kind of information, is to highlight or to promote wetlands restoration through detecting areas where we can implement this activities. And also we can use this baseline to assess the main pressures on wetlands, like, for example, by delineating this functional area surrounding the wetland habitats, and assessing the pressures on the within this area, the pressures, for example, agricultural or urban pressures within this area, and to see the evolution of these pressures over time. So this is the good news now, that this map is now available, and what we need now is to develop more and more wetlands habitats mapping for other countries, in addition to the 2 countries that we have seen together today. So thanks a lot for your attention, and if you have questions, I will be happy to answer in French or in English, or even in Arabic if you want.
Thank you, Hanis. Thank you very much for this very interesting and detailed talk with even clear examples from different parts of the Mediterranean. I don't know if there are some questions. Yes, I think there are some hands raised up. So I let the audience to ask you the question. So I think Vasco, if you are here, you can start with your question to Hanis.
Thank you. Just a short question. What's the scale of the produced map? This last one you just presented, the potential wetland areas.
Sorry, you said the scale? Or?
Well, the pixel size.
Yeah. So for this one, at the moment, we have used a global DEM at 90 meters to produce this map. But knowing thus that the same DEM is available at 30 meter of spatial resolution. So we have it for some countries at 30 meters, but at the regional scale, we have it at 90 meters.
Okay. Hypothetically, is the process, the methodology, will it be made available so that we can reproduce it for 30 meters, for example, for our country?
Yes, of course. Yes, because the 90 meters, the limit of 90 meters was based on because we have based the processing on the DEM at 90 meters, but the same global DEM is the Copernicus DEM that is now available at 30 meter. We can have it at 30 meter for all the countries. The previous examples that I have shown for Albania and Tunisia was made on 30 meters.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Vasco. You have other questions? I can't see any hands raised up. If not, Anis, I would have some questions or reflection for you to just to propose. You showed the great variety and the interdifference of the situation that can be encountered in the Mediterranean, and not only between different countries, but also within the same country, with different types of wetlands characterized by different levels of detectability, and most important, subject to extremely temporal variation. So I would ask, what are the main difficulties to communicate and to explain all these and all the parameters that you calculated to the government of that interested countries, and how do they respond in this sense? If there is something that you can do to communicate it, and then just a personal curiosity, how you can work in situation of karstic phenomena, because there are many regions of the Mediterranean where surface water are almost absent, but as you mentioned, potentially at the hydrographic level, they are really important. So I have just these two specific curiosity for you.
Yeah, so for the first question regarding how to work with the countries, so I'll talk mainly for Tunisia. So for Tunisia, we have developed this approach in collaboration with the National Ramsar Authority, which is the Direction Générale des Forêts, and National Directorate of Forestry. And they were also participating to better integrate their definition of wetlands into our approach. So we collaborated together in developing this common definition and how to integrate their definition in our approach. And also now we are we will work with them on capacity building. So they asked us also to provide training to their to the different agencies, national and regional agencies that are dealing with wetlands, but not only wetlands, also water-related ecosystems or water management and land and landscape management. So we will organize this capacity building with this authorities. And the second, the second point is that this approach and also the results that are derived from this approach based on Earth observation will also be used to implement the national wetlands strategy. So the national wetland strategy is now almost finished and developed for Tunisia, and we are talking with them and working with them on its implementation on one activity, which is the first and the main activity of this national wetland strategy is to update the national wetlands inventory, and they will base this update or they will use our baseline to update their national wetlands inventory. And the second question, which is more technical question on the karstic wetlands, this is why I'm showing here this part of Albania, because we have a lot of karstic wetlands in the Balkan, specifically in this part of Albania, in the middle of the country. So if you see here all this spots here, all these wetlands here, the open water bodies according to the SDG definition are in fact karstic, not underground karstic wetlands, but karstic lake, surface lake. So we can detect the wetlands or the water in the karstic region if they are on the surface area. But we can also, based on the geological map, we can also delineate let's say the whole karstic region, but unfortunately we cannot map the habitat based only on the information provided by satellite images. So we can detect the water on the surface. We can also detect the karstic region or the karstic areas based on geological maps, for example, but not with the high level of accuracy if we want to have all the karstic wetlands included in the map.
Okay, thank you very much, Anis. I see that there is a question from Mauro.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. First of all, thank you for your interesting presentation. It's your tool is very exciting. I think it's very useful. But I have a comment. I would like to know your opinion. I also appreciate your comments about the you said that this is a tool, a baseline, and then that must be integrated by field observation. For example, about ecosystem services and threats and species presence or absence. But I have a comment also about your definition of habitat. In my opinion, this is maybe just a point of view. These are not what you show by Cornelian cover or Ramsar types. These are like wetland types more than habitats, because in my point of view, or according also, for example, by the Habitats Directive, they are missing the biotic component. This you define this just by abiotic things. So I would like to hear about this from you. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for your very relevant question. And you are 100% right. This is not the detailed habitat definition that we are using. Of course, if you see the habitat directive or the UNIS nomenclature system, which is used for the habitat directive or birds directive reporting, it's much more detailed in terms of definition, and it includes also a lot of biotic components for vegetation components and population, etc. So of course, what we are using here, as you said, and as I said before, is a baseline for wetlands inventory, but not detailed habitats of detailed map of wetland habitats. For this, we will need to use other approaches, and we cannot also have this approach which is which aims to provide a regional picture or a national picture of wetlands based on this very detailed habitat classification. So as you can say, this definition, I will go back here. So these definitions that are used are based mainly on the Ramsar definitions of wetlands. But if we want to have very detailed habitat definitions of the existing wetland, here we should use other approaches, including approaches based on Earth observation. But I will say, or I will advise to use it at the site level and not at the national level, because it will provide us a map with many errors and confusions. So usually we use this detailed nomenclature to map habitats at a very local level, at the site level, for instance, but not to provide this kind of map at national or regional scales. But you are totally right. It's not the detailed habitat definition that we are using here. It's just based on the Korean land cover, but also complemented by the Ramsar definition of wetlands, as you can see here for Albania.
Thank you. I agree with you. So.
And yes, just good to come back to what you said regarding the field data. Of course, as I said, this is not the final inventory, so we still need to complement this database by adding new or other information, including information that we cannot detect from the space, we cannot detect from satellite images, from field, for example, by assessing the main threats. Some threats we can detect them from satellite images, like agriculture expansion or urban sprawl, etc. But there are other source of disturbance or source of threats that we cannot detect from space, like water pollution, for instance, or hunting, or other source of disturbance of wetlands. So we need to complement this information by adding new other variables or other information to the data set, in order to have this harmonized and complete or comprehensive, inventory, wetlands inventory. So wetlands inventory is not only based on the mapping of the habitats or the type of land cover, but it's also it should also include the site names, the definition, the main pressures, the main ecosystem services, threats, etc. I will look at the chat if there are any questions.
I cannot see any other hands raised up. I don't know, Anis, I'm just curious about, in your opinion, how countries could also prepare themselves to face the environmental challenges of the near future in this sense. What's your possible scenario about the wetland situation and potential wetland situation in the next decades, according to the studies and Earth observation tools that you are using since many years, and all the temporal trends that you have detected until now? So have you any scenario that you want to share with us?
Maybe not a scenario that's I have in mind, but maybe by defining priorities, as we said at the beginning, that knowing more about wetlands or knowing more about the wetland ecosystems, including having their location and delineation, I think it's one of the main step that we should start with. And I would just talk about the Mediterranean region. So I think that there is very urgent it's an urgent moment for implementing action, including or specifically restoration actions, but also conservation actions. And for this, we need to know this information, or we need to have this information in order to support the countries, but also at more local scale to implement these activities and these actions. So for some countries at the Mediterranean scale, in some countries, they were already very well advanced in gathering this information. We'll see also later with the Thanos on the Mediterranean islands that we have already this baseline. We have already this information on wetlands location and main characteristics. And the next step should be now to use this information for implementing conservation and restoration actions. But unfortunately, in many other countries at national scale or even at some regional or local scale, this information is lacking and is missing. So the priority now is to have this data or this baseline available at the regional scale, at least for most countries, for as many countries as possible, in order to have the facility or to have the opportunity to know where we can put effort and money, of course, in terms of restoration, but also protection and conservation. So this is my opinion. I think that we can talk more about this later on, but I think that the main priority is to have the baseline information, or to develop this baseline information in as many countries as possible.
Yes, I completely agree. So thank you for this answer, Hanis. And I don't know if there are any other questions from the public, from the audience. We have still 4 or 5 minutes before the coffee break, but if there are no any other questions, probably, I don't know, Sana, we can choose to anticipate a little bit the coffee break, and then inviting Thanos to take the floor for the second speech of the day.
Yeah, if there's no more question, why not?
Maybe, peut-être des questions en français.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
Si vous avez des questions que vous voulez les poser en français, n'hésitez pas.
Ou en arabe, tu as dit, Anis, non?
Aussi.
Hello.
Yes, oui.
I am Erwin for the National Park Divya Karavasta, and the Lagoon of Karavasta ecosystem. It's in Ramsar sites, and I see in the map. But I think in the future need to see this map, because here we have some change, but we think the natural change in the map, because the sea, Adriatic Sea in Divjaka Beach now going far away. And last year, for example, are created a more lagoons, surface of lagoons, but also are more marsh salt in this part. Thank you.
Yes, so please correct me if I'm wrong. Karavasta Lagoon is this one, right? But I'm pointing with the mouse.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. So
or Divya Karavasta.
Yeah. So I have already worked on mapping land use land cover for this Ramsar site, and you're totally right. I mean, if you look at the images from the last 30 or 40 years, we can see that the coastal area or the coastal zone is moving a lot and changing a lot due to different factors. So there is, of course, a link with the sea level rise, but not only. There are also other factors that are impacting, I guess, that are impacting this, the coastal area. And yeah, so the aim, I think that one of the objectives that we can also add to this work is to assess the changes, because if you look, for example, to the SDG 661 definition, the SDG 661 definition is not only based on the wetland delineation or wetland habitat delineation at one point of time, but also to assess the changes over time. So I think that specifically for the coastal wetlands, assessing the changes in relation with the sea level rise, for instance, are crucial and should be integrated in the different monitoring programs at national scale, but also at regional scale. So, for example, this map could be updated, like we have produced this for using images on 2015. So we can update these images by more recent map, or we can also update these images in 5 years or in 10 years and to see the changes. So these are the main changes that we can observe on the coastal wetlands, which are related to the shifting, the habitat shifting due to the coastal hydromorphology and also the sea level rise. But we can also detect the changes related to the dams building. So there are many dams that are built specifically in the Balkan countries. So new dams that are built. And if we look from a year to another, or from a time period to another, we can also detect these changes in terms of artificial wetlands that have been constructed or built in these years. So I think that this is a baseline for inventories at one point of time, but it could be also replicated for another time period to assess the changes and to see how these changes are affecting or impacting the wetland habitats. In this case, for Karavasta, the sea level rise and the coastal area changing, but also if we see at the inland wetlands or the rivers, specifically rivers and streams, what are the impacts of dams on this natural ecosystems.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We will kindly invite you now for a coffee break. So we'll be back on 11:20. Je vous invite à une pause café qui va durer 10 minutes. Donc, on revient à 11h20.
Hello, welcome back. I don't know if you are all there. If so, we can start again. Thanos, you are here, Anis as well, and most of the others. So if you agree, I think that we can start. So in the first seminar, we saw how Anis underlined the importance of using Earth-based tools for detecting and studying wetlands. And despite the great potential of these tools, some intrinsic limits remain due to the nature of the system. And so sometimes it's not possible to obtain all the environmental data sometimes associated to wetlands. This is why also Hannes mentioned the importance to integrate other approach and methodologies as well, as Thanos will now present to us with some examples from Greece and other areas of the Mediterranean basin. So Thanos is presenting Discovering the Island Oasis of the Mediterranean, a methodological approach. So Thanos, if you are ready, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Flavio. Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here among very familiar faces. and partners from Malta, Sardinia, Croatia, Turkey, and other regions of the Mediterranean. I'm really happy to see a lot of people here, and this is thanks to MedWet that invited all these people. Also, people from Madagascar or the UK. I'm really glad to see you here. So today, and let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Can you see the full screen, or can you see the one with the notes? I'm not sure what kind of.
Yeah, we see
the full without comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to today. I'm going to present our experience from Greece and from the project conservation of the island wetlands of Greece that took place from 2004 until 2015-16, and later on expanded to the whole of the Mediterranean basin and to the whole of the islands of the Mediterranean basin. So I have structured my presentation in 3 parts. The first one is about the conservation of the island wetlands of Greece. The second one is about the conservation of the island wetlands of the Mediterranean. It's called MedWet. Probably some of you already know about that. And in the third part, I am presenting you some tools and some approaches that we have used to implement all this work. Thank you, Anis, for presenting for this really good presentation. I think that we are addressing some challenges that you have already mentioned in your presentation, and this work is going deeper and apart from the delineation of wetlands, we have worked with local stakeholders with the ultimate goal to protect the wetlands both in Greece and in the Mediterranean basin. So let's start with that. So for a long time, the attention of the Greek state, the scientific community and the NGOs was focused on the big mainland wetlands of Greece. So their significance for biodiversity and their role in economy was more than obvious. Thus, we knew more about Ramsar sites, for example, Prespa Lake, Kerkini Lake, than smaller wetlands. Sorry. What did I do? Sorry for that. Okay, I think that you can see it also. Okay. However, we were completely unaware of the small wetlands in Greece. So where were they located? How many there were? What are the significance for the local community and the biodiversity, etc. So many wetlands, small wetlands, especially on the Greek islands, remain in obscurity. Wetlands were, in the mind of everybody, something big, covered with permanent water and of course with a lot of birds. However, we had indications that the island wetlands were of great ecological value. Endemic species, especially on the island of Aegean and in Crete, were dependent on the presence of water, while like the Cretan bluet and endemic species in Crete, or the Cretan frog, or the fish in Rhode Islands, while also Eastern Aegean and Ionian islands were supposed to be very significant for the migration of millions of birds. or even the habitats. We knew that they host rare types of habitats, and they contribute to landscape mosaics, protect the soils from salinization, etc. However, as they were unknown, all these small wetlands, they were let alone protected. At the same time, WWF Greece was receiving an increasing number of complaints about destructive activities in wetlands. And some main reasons that were identified was the absence of the clear legislative framework for the conservation, insufficiency of environmental protection mechanisms, strong pressure from tourism industry for development. Don't forget that we are in the Mediterranean, a hotspot also for tourism development and tourism globe-wide. People here in Greece still they have the right to build almost everywhere. Another reason was the ignorance of competent bodies, authorities, and citizens, and of course back then a weak political will. So in 2004, after the suggestion of Mario Broggi, Professor Mario Broggi, and a herpetologist that still is visiting Greece and all the islands, and with the support of MAVA Foundation, we started a wetland inventory at the beginning only at the Aegean archipelagos. Unfortunately, back then, the available tools to input new data and identify wetlands in order to conduct an inventory was very, very, very limited. So you could either buy some satellite image, something that was very, very costly, or you could use the good old familiar way. I mean, contact NGOs, universities, scientific communities, etc., and get some information from there, public stakeholders, etc. And of course, data retrieved from bibliography. As a result, back then, from 2004 to 2007, we obtained data for 352 wetlands on 51 islands. On 2007, however, WWF Greece decided to expand this inventory in the whole of Greece and undertake actions for all island wetlands, both also in Aegean, Ionian, and Crete. So the project Conservation of the Island Wetlands of Greece was based on 4 main pillars. The first one was establishment of necessary scientific knowledge base required for the conservation of the wetlands, documentation of knowledge. The second one was diffusion of knowledge towards the mobilization of public and civil society for the protection of wetlands. The third one was handle and avert site-specific threats during the project. And the fourth, of course, is the promotion of adequate protection frameworks at national and local level. However, in 2007, there was a big change in the way that we were working. So we started using Google Earth. This was a new tool back in 2007 that up to that point, it was in a very, very primitive stage. It started to grow and Google started to upload new satellite images. And these images had better resolution, cover almost the entire insular area of Greece. Besides that, we had also other tools like the Bing maps, maps from the Greek National Cadastre and Mapping Agency, and another tool that I will show you later on, the web page stripping view. So during this period, more than 1,000 points were located in Google Maps, in Google Earth, and we visited almost 800 of them. In 9 years of the project, as I said, we recorded more than 800 wetlands, 824 on 75 islands. The distribution of the patterns of the wetlands is similar to the islands. There are many, they are small, and they are dispersed. Their size is important. However, more important is the network itself. So these wetlands act as a network and not alone. For example, if a small wetland is lost, normally we had these examples like in Crete that we lost one wetland practically in one night due to dam filling and transform into a tavern, a restaurant for weddings. So the loss of one wetland, maybe it's not significant in terms of biodiversity. However, if you start losing a lot of wetlands, then you start weakening the network of this of the whole system. I forgot to say that we inventoried wetlands above 0.1 hectares. Not riverine systems, but estuaries also, both artificial and natural. So comparing WWF inventories to previous knowledge that we had for the island of Greece, we discovered 8 times more wetlands through this process than already existed in the National Inventory of 1994. And the 30% more area on 75 islands. So in this inventory, we gather a lot of information, and somehow we needed to organize this information in order to be more accessible and more efficient and more useful to us. For that reason, we created, and for our own use, 5 databases. This was a preliminary version of the online database. The first version was made in MS Access. So we started putting all the information from the in-situ visits there. Another database was the geo database in ArcGIS. The third database was a reference database, putting their information from literature. Also a photographic database and video database. Don't forget that we were in the field and we have thousands of photos from the field visits. And the final one was a correspondence database, because throughout these years we sent and we received a lot of letters to the public authorities in order to stop degradation activities, as I will tell you later on. So the second objective of the project was the diffusion of knowledge towards the mobilization of public and civil society for the protection of wetlands. At the first years of the project, during the first period, we kept low profile as intensive publicity for the status of the wetlands and the conservation needs would probably cause an explosion of fencing, filling up with debris, building, etc. However, a huge peak happened after 2010 as we were getting along with our policy actions and therefore to bring the issues on the surface. All these years, we set up an early warning system network in 6 to 8 islands. We try to mobilize people from these islands, and we try to bring them together to us as volunteers to participate in our causes, in our in our events, etc. As a matter of fact, I don't know. So from this pool of people, we set up a small initiative in order to monitor the physicochemical status of specific wetlands like temperature, turbidity, etc., by using a kit that we bought. and some other dozen of actions in all the islands, clearing actions, stop degradation activities, etc. As also a lot of publications, mainly in Greek, also in blogs, in social media, articles in newspapers, etc. Also, we organized 3 summer camps in 3 specific wetlands on the islands in order to support the protection and at some point the restoration of these wetlands. The third pillar was the avert of site-specific threats. So working with island wetlands brought us face to face with the extent of degradation due to human intervention and impelled us to treat each case separately, claiming the protection and the ecological management. Overall, we acted in more than 15 islands, either by stopping degradation activities or by collaborating with public services, NGOs, and citizens in restoration activities. It's worth mentioning that we stopped more than 140 degradation cases in 67 wetlands on these islands. We prepared technical reports for the restoration of 13 wetlands, and we started implementing in 2 cases, in Crete, both of them. Also, we had lighter conservation actions in more than 30 wetlands involving citizens, public authorities, and NGOs. One very iconic area was, and I show this to you in order to tell you that how things were happening and still happens in Greece, but all over in the Med also. So in 2004, we went in this small wetland in Ios Island. However, later on and before promoting their protection, in 2008, some private initiatives started to build in this area, and today this area is something like that. And this is not only a Greek phenomenon. Similar problems exist in all over the Mediterranean, especially in the coastal zone, where the pressure for development is enormous. Another area also in Crete. However, at the same time, as I said, we had some proposals for restorations. And we managed to implement some restoration activities in 2 cases. And finally, the last pillar of the Greek project was to promote policy actions in Greece, policy action for the protection of the island wetlands in Greece. So we gather all this information and we send all this information to the public stakeholders in all the known formats that you can think of. I mean, think that 10 years ago that we had this initiative, that we send all the data, still the public services didn't know how to open a JPEG or a KML format or a save file. So we send all this information in different formats. As a result, we managed to include 5 wetlands in a wildlife refuge in the island of Lesbos, along with the local stakeholders there. We send all the data and include 74 wetlands in spatial planning as protected areas in the spatial management plans. However, the most important was that we gave all this information from the inventory to the state, and a presidential decree was approved and produced in 2012 putting under strict protection 380 natural wetlands below 8 hectares in 59 islands. This was the most important policy actions that we managed to achieve. As a result, from this project, you can see here how many wetlands were protected before the project and after the project. So we had almost twice wetlands protected through any legal tool. And finally, in 2015, with the support of WWF Greece, the Greek state proposed the Ramsar resolution to the Ramsar Convention in Uruguay. Finally, this resolution was adopted by the member states. This resolution calls upon the member states and the parties of the Mediterranean to inventory their island wetlands and share the data through databases open to the public, to protect their island wetlands through national laws, spatial plans, water management plans, etc., to restore their island wetlands, and to designate underrepresented type of wetlands as additional wetlands of international importance, as Ramsar sites. And this very significant resolution was the start for taking this local or national, you can say it whatever you like, project to a bigger scale. This is an excellent example of a project, of how to replicate a project from a local perspective to a more global perspective. And this, as I said, take us to the second step. So from 2017, and because of this resolution and with the support of MAVA, we launched the Mediterranean Island Wetlands Project, MedWet, in order to promote the protection, the documentation, of course, the inventory, and after that, the protection of the island wetlands of the Mediterranean. In this effort, at the beginning, we collaborated, we make a partnership with 13 partners from 9 countries of the Mediterranean. Later on in 2012, this partnership expanded to other partners also, with the main objectives: first, to document the island wetlands through national inventories, to disseminate the knowledge to the general public and authorities, to promote of their protection at the national and Mediterranean level, and to restore at least one wetland per country. As a result, there have been made similar approach have been used as the Greek project, as in the Greek project. Also, a preliminary search of the wetlands through Google Earth and other tools. And after that, the local teams started visiting the areas. They made more than 300 field visits in 142 islands of the Mediterranean. Finally, we have created 9 different databases, 1 per country. You can find the link of each site of each database in this link here, or you can search in Google MedWet, and the first result will take you there. And as a result, Cyprus, Turkey, Croatia, Malta, Italy with Sicily and Sardinia, France with Corsica and some other smaller islands, the Balearic Islands and Tunisia have already almost finished the in situ visits and the inventories. Some information from a first preliminary consolidated analysis that is being made by Tour de Valais and the other partners is that in a total of almost 16,500 wetlands in the Mediterranean, 86% are artificial and only 14% is natural. And this is because in Sicily, the majority of the wetlands there are small, and they are small ponds, reservoirs for agriculture. On the opposite, the area of the island wetlands, the 70% of the island wetlands are natural, of the area of the wetlands are natural, while only 28% are artificial. However, in some areas, like for example in Crete, that I know really well, 5 years ago, the area of the artificial wetlands is equal or exceeded the area of the natural ones, and this is it's not very promising. At the same time, as I said before, all these wetlands consist of a network. The majority of them are below 1 hectare or 10 hectares, while only a few are above 100 hectares. And let me show you a picture of how this network works. So the big polygons are, let's say, the big wetlands in the Mediterranean, not only in the Mediterranean, while the smaller ones are depicted with the small polygons. If you lose some big part of a big wetlands, then okay, they will continue to be there. However, if you start losing smaller wetlands, then you will lose the integrity of this network, with a huge impact in local societies, of course, because we are talking about islands, and one wetland in one island is an oasis within the island. An oasis in one island, an island is an oasis in the desert of the sea, if we can say that. But one wetland, especially in the Eastern Mediterranean or in the south of the Mediterranean, is an oasis within the island. So you start losing wetlands. If you start losing small wetlands, then you have a problem for local societies, also for biodiversity. They are stepping stones for animals, for birds, or they are place habitats for endemic species, etc. So you are start losing flora and fauna. And at the policy level, I'm not going to read all this table, of course, but at the policy level, all the partners in the Mediterranean, they are working towards this goal. Indicatively, in Cyprus, they have already produced a report for protecting the high ecological value wetlands of Cyprus, and they are working with the government right now to promote that. In Tunisia, similarly, they are working for an action plan, as the biggest problem in Tunisia is the waste disposal problem. So they are working on an action plan. In Turkey, they have succeeded the inclusion of wetlands in the national inventory, while the biggest wetland on the islands, which is Gökçeada Lagoon, has been identified as wetland of national importance. Malta, also they are working with the government to include their wetlands in the riverbed management plans. In Spain, similarly, they are working with the Balearic government for the preparation of the wetland strategy. Croatia similarly, and France and Italy. And last, regarding the island wetlands of the Mediterranean, last pillar is the promotion of restoration throughout the islands of the Mediterranean. So one of the objectives was to start to have restoration activities started and implemented in at least 12 wetlands of the Mediterranean. And right now, works have started in all of these areas. And until the end of 2022, most of them will have been restored. Finally, and before going to the third part of the presentation, which is more technical, I wanted to give you some more data, some more financial data. So the Greek Island Wetlands project from 2004 until 2015-16 costed more or less 1.2 million euros for all this work, for the inventory, for the local actions with the public, for policy actions, etc. 1.2 million for 10, 11 years is not a lot of money, taking into account that right now the live projects for 3 or 4 years cost more than 2 or 3 million euros. However, the big victory is that when we started to replicate this work in the Mediterranean, the total cost started to getting lower. And right now, if I'm not wrong, and if I remember well, the total cost for replicating this work in the whole region of the Mediterranean is about 1.5 or 2 million euros, which is actually quite good. So let me take you right now to the third section of the presentation and tell you really quick some processes that we followed, some the methodological approach for the island wetlands of Greece first. So at first we started working with Google Earth, as I told you. How did we do that? We started scanning thoroughly all the island of Greece, similarly all the island of the Med. We use some grid and we start scanning the shoreline first. After that, we start marking all the potential wetland sites. These are the potential wetland sites, not the actual ones. As I said, not linear systems, and we included all, both natural and artificial, above 0.1 hectare. And after that, we start putting codes and names, a name given to all potential sites. For Greece, we use this norm. We put 3 letters and 3 digits. The letters were an acronym of the islands, and the name of the wetland was based on the name of the area or the wetland following by the type of the wetland. So here, for example, we have an estuary, we had an estuary, we call it Carteros estuary, etc. Still, we are in the office we haven't visited the area. However, we draw a potential delineation of the wetland. And this delineation will probably change after the in situ visit. The delineation includes wetlands and an area around this, which is critical for their protection, like sand dunes. The delineation also may include the degraded wetland areas that can be restored. In some cases, we can include a part of the sea, while also it could contain human activities in that delineation. The next step is to organize the data in folders and subfolders like that. And finally, it's very important to add some other useful layers in Google Earth, like national protection status, administration, administrative information, or overlay other maps. And of course, use the historical the historical imaginary of Google Earth that gives you a lot of information for the status of wetlands some years ago. We used also big maps, as in some cases the resolution was higher. A very useful tool, and maybe you can visit that, is tripinview, tripinview.com. This is a private company. However, if you go there, it's like a helicopter flying all over the shoreline of the Mediterranean, and it can give you some pictures from above to make you understand how the area is. And finally, I bet that you have similar tools in your countries. In Greece, we have the Greek National Cadastre that they can provide you for free photos of today and of 1960s, 1945, 1960s. So you can have an idea of how the area was and how it is today. After that, we organize all this information in the GIS-based database with all these fields that I have put here in the slides. And after that, we started organize ourselves to go to the field. I'm showing you some pictures. Well, they might be good pictures or nice pictures or not. However, what I try to say is that when you are going to the field, the most important of all is to take photos and videos, because photos and videos is documentation. When we started working in the field, we were taking pictures in low resolution, etc. After that, we understood that we need to have as many photos and as many videos as we can, and in high resolution, because this is how we document the existence of wetlands, and we go back to the office and be able to identify flora, fauna, impact, human activities, etc. So some tips from our experience: we take pics at full resolution, some pics from above, to have from a hill or from a top of a building, to have the whole wetland in the frame. Right now there are drones, so back then if we had drones, we could have used drones because it's a very, very useful tool. Pictures that will help us later to identify flora, fauna, habitats, etc. We record video as if we were talking to ourselves with no shame, and in the video we describe what we see. And also we geolocate our photos with appropriate applications. And after that, when we go back, we organize the photos and videos accordingly, and we put, it's very, very important to put some keywords there in order to go back and be able to identify and to find them when you need it. We had a reference of a database of more than 1,000 papers, studies, etc. We need also to organize that in appropriate application. We used Mendeley. While I told you before that in order to handle and avert site-specific threats, we started sending letters to the public authorities in order to asking questions about the degradation activities and asking to stop the degradation activities. In order to, so we have outcome letters that have been sent, and we have received more than 1,200. And in order to be able to search, we also organize this amount of letters in a database. And of course, we need to keep track all of the activities immediately after implementing them. And the last 2 or 3 slides, I have put here the methodology, what we did before the field visits and after the field visits. So we need to understand the area of concern, read the relevant literature before going to a specific area, do the work with Google Earthing and set up a course in the trip in Google Earth. We were also printing the field sheet and the map and preparing the hardware like GPS, photo cameras, etc. In the field, we will always go out in pairs. One of the pairs, it's better if it's better to recognize habitats types, and the other probably pair and the other person fill in the field sheets and discuss among us what is happening, what we can see, etc. First, we walk around the wetland trying to understand it. We don't need to rush up, no need for pictures at the beginning or videos. If we find locals, always ask for additional information. What is the name of the wetland? Give us more information about hydrological data, presence of animals, etc., because they know more. And make a more detailed circle, take photos and videos, and complete the field sheet. After that, when we go back to the field, of course, as I said, we organize the data in Google Earth, in the photos and videos, and start filling the data in the database. And that's all for me right now, and thank you for your attention. It's quite challenging to talk to a computer without seeing the faces. This is where I stop. And probably I can also show you this one here, which is the Greek database. Similarly, the other databases, it's the Balearic, the French, the Maltese, etc. So it's similar. You can see the other databases structured the similar way. So if you go, for example, in Spain, Greek and English, you can search by wetland name, island, municipality. You can explore by various filters here. And if you go to an wetland here, it seems that let me go here. For example, let me search by island, Limnos. Okay. So if you go to a field sheet here, you can find the map of the delineation, some general information about wetland location, region, etc., Ramsar type, the protection statuses, the ecosystem services, habitat and impact, habitats and vegetation, some species mainly taken from the literature, also from the field visit, and of course some images. And all this information can be extracted in an Excel file. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Thanos, for this very interesting and detailed talk with the examples and also practical suggestions. First of all, congratulations for the work and for the outstanding and enduring field work, first of all in Greece and then in the other parts of the Mediterranean. I think that you deserve a standing ovation, but maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that there are no other examples like that in the world. Please correct if I'm wrong. And for this reason, I would just like to know if this kind of approach could be easily exported outside the Mediterranean to other geographical areas around the world. But I will lead the other participants to pose questions to you before, and then if there is time, I would be curious about that. What's happening around the world.
Let me answer you very quick, Flavio,
Okay.
on that. So after finishing the Greek island wetlands project, we did this preliminary search of all the Mediterranean islands using Google Earth. So we pinpoint, we search all the island wetlands, all the islands of the Mediterranean, pinpoint the potential sites, and we share this information with all the partners, practically starting the MedWet project. At the same time, we did the same thing for Cape Verde and for the Azores Island, and we were in contact because although they are not in the center of the Med, they are inside the hotspot, the Mediterranean hotspot. So we were in contact with local NGOs there. We sent all these pinpoints, the Google Earth pinpoints, and they started to draft in some proposals for for taking actions like this to replicate the things there. So we are somewhere here right now.
Okay. Yes, I see that Christian has the hands raised up. So Christian, if you want, you can make your question.
Yes, thank you, Thanos, for a very interesting presentation and a great project. I wanted to know whether after the 380 wetlands were protected by presidential decree almost 10 years ago, did you do any follow-up to know whether they have been respected actually on the ground? Do you have a network, I don't know, of wetland caretakers like IBA caretakers, something like that, to follow up?
No, but at some point, Christian, we did some Google Earth search regarding the potential changes. I could say that very much it's respectful, and the public authorities, they are using this legal status for their protection. And I think that from my experience that they have reduced the interventions in these areas. However, you know better than me. You know also very well that it's another thing, legal protection. You know the paper and the law, and another thing, what are they really doing? However, it's a start. Further work needs to be done on that, and if probably now or in 5 years we need to go back and start and check whether this is fully implemented or not.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Thanos? So we have plenty of time, actually. Still 10, 15 minutes, I think. If not, Thanos, I can just ask you clarification about your talk while waiting for other questions coming. I saw that during the first part of the project in Greece, you mentioned more than 150 cases of degradation of wetlands, if I'm not wrong. And then almost 13 reports or restoration cases were presented, but at the end, only 2 were actually implemented. I don't know if I'm wrong with these numbers, but at the same time, at the end of the project, more than the double of the wetlands were protected, which is quite enormous. So I wonder why about this mismatch between the case of degradation detected on the field and lastly the implemented restoration activities in the first part, and if there were improvements so far?
I will be sincere with you, Flavio.
Just a curiosity.
We managed to stop almost all the degradation activities. I mean, we had this early warning system. So at the time of the degradation, we had people from all the main islands giving us information in real time about the degradation. So we started sending letters, etc. And we managed to stop most of the degradation activities, most 90%. However, not even once, in one example, in one area, we had a restoration activity, a restoration of these degradation activities. Unfortunately, the two areas that we tried to restore, and at some point we did some actions there, there was degraded wetlands that they were degraded 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So we started maturing the restoration slowly, but it's not very promising. It's very difficult out there. If you are working in the field, the authority, the processes are very slow. If you go some cases in the court, then it's very slow. It can take 5 years to have the first judge, or maybe 5-7 years, and it's very problematic.
Yes, okay, thank you. But at least if more than 90% of these cases were actually stopped, is already good results, I think. So, okay, thank you for this clarification, which was just a curiosity. Yes, I can see that there is a question on the chat, Thanos, from Leeds.
I can see that.
Okay.
Thank you for this question. So after that, we were discussing among us about the replication in the mainland of Greece, or in the replication in other areas. Actually, also ECVI is replicating, not replicating, is doing a similar work using similar processes also for the mainland of Greece. So we have some some results from there. And it can also be replicated in other areas, in the mainland of other areas of Europe. However, I have to say that SWOS also is a very good tool. The European Space Agency also is using a similar tool to identify wetlands from satellite images. I think that in order to make it more efficient, a combination of this tool is needed to identify first the potential wetlands area, and before going to the field. For me, going to the field is absolutely necessary in order to support your policy actions, to support to promote their significance at a local scale. Absolutely necessary action is to go to the field and do the inventory. However, a lot of resources is needed to identify these potential areas, and for me, a combination of these tools, SWOS, the European Space Agency methodology also, and absolutely Google Earth to refine the findings is necessary for this preliminary work.
Okay, thank you. I see that there is Anis, which would like to.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Thanos, for the great presentation and the great work you've done since many years. And I totally agree with you that these approaches are totally complementary and should be used together. As you said, that assessing wetland condition through field visit is crucial and very necessary to have readable database for inventories, and also having this baseline maps that we have produced for Albania and Tunisia, but also for we are now working on other countries in the Mediterranean is also needed to have this general picture of the wetlands. And I would like to say that it depends on the objectives where to put this data or how to use this different data. For example, if you work with Ramsar authorities or national authorities, they are maybe most interested for having information for reporting to international agreements like Ramsar or SDGs or whatever, and using this baseline map, they can answer to some of this, or they can report on some of these indicators. However, if we want to implement national inventories, we need to maybe to combine these different approaches based on this field visits and collecting field information from different wetland sites. And as I said before, identifying wetland habitats is different than having a database on wetland sites. So I think that we need definitely to find a way how to combine this different approach, and I think that we can, for example, work based on the source approach that I have presented, work on integrating this information in the database that you have already developed for the Mediterranean islands, and to see how we can fit into this database in order to have, let's say, very regional and wide picture, depending on the objectives, depending on what we want to assess, and to provide this to all the wetland practitioners in the Mediterranean. Could be wetland managers, but also national authorities or regional authorities like the European Commission, etc.
Thank you, Anis. I have also another thought. Since most of us are from the Med, just keep in mind that through this MedWet project, more than 10 teams from all the Mediterranean have been trained on going to the field, doing inventories in situ, etc. So in case someone is interested to expand in the mainland, you should have you have also a contact point in your country to talk to them and probably get some training and expand in the mainland. For us, it's crucial to expand. We are not in the 60s, we are not in the 70s. Right now we have tools, and it's more than easy to acquire this knowledge. The knowledge is not the goal. The goal is to protect these wetlands and to promote the legal protection. And the goal, of course, right now is to start restoring the wetlands for the sake of biodiversity, of course, but also for the sake of protection of the local communities from floods or from droughts, etc. Climate change, as you said, Flavio, is coming, is here, and will affect us definitely. Wetlands and restoring wetlands is one of the answers to that. For me, of course, it's not the bigger issue. The bigger issue in the Mediterranean is the degradation of wetlands because of human activities and because of touristic activities. And right now, it's not in the top of the list in our discussion. In the discussion, climate change is the first, and we miss the other point. However, restoring wetlands is the absolutely next big thing.
Thank you, Thanos and Anis, for this clarification and pressing this discussion. I don't know if there are any other questions for Thanos and about his work, actually. Cannot see any other hands raised on for the moment. In any case, you have the possibility to write to pod presenters by email in case you have much more curiosity. And before leaving, I would leave the word to Sana for some practical information.
Thank you all. Thank you, Thanos and Anis, for the quality of your presentation. I would like to inform you that all the presentation and recorded webinars are available on MedWet Academy on the website of medwetmanagers.net. Donc, toutes les présentations et les webinaires enregistrés sont disponibles dans l'onglet MedWet. Dans l'onglet MedWet Academy, dans le site web medwetmanager.net. I would like to take this opportunity to remind you the dates of our next webinars. So we will have a webinar on ecosystem services on the 24th of March and on climate change on 19th of May. And finally, I just want to invite you to turn on your camera so we can have a group photo and to smile.
Sana, si tu peux arrêter le partage.
Yeah, sure. Merci d'allumer vos caméras pour une photo de groupe et de sourire, si vous voulez. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Sana. Okay, so I would like to thank once again the speakers of the day, Anis and Thanos. Thank you very much for being with us today. And of course, for the participants that we were a lot, almost more than 70 to attend this specific webinar today. So I hope to see you all on the next webinar about ecosystem services, as Sana has mentioned, and I'm happy to wish you a good rest of the day. So thank you once again and goodbye. Ciao, Tanis and Nis.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.